Imagine being Hamlet at 10:45 on BBC One.
We ourselves have become a force of nature. We are changing the climate.
There's been no rainfall for 3 years.
That landscape's completely changed now.
What happens really is up to us.
David Attenborough asks, are we changing planet Earth? Part of the BBC's Climate Chaos season. Tomorrow at 9 on BBC One.
And after that, tomorrow, why not switch over to BBC 4 for a whole night of Climate Chaos programmes? And if you're online, take part in the special experiment. Log on to bbc.co.uk/Climate Chaos.
This is BBC One in the South. Now the 10 o'clock news with Huw Edwards and Sejal Karia.
The number of people with gambling problems online is rising sharply. Gambling on the web is now a multi-billion-dollar business, but growing numbers are getting into difficulty. New evidence seen by the BBC shows tens of thousands seeking help and advice. Also tonight, the immigration system is inadequate and officials could be sacked for mistakes, warns the Home Secretary.
It is inadequate in terms of its information technology, leadership, management, systems and processes.
Complementary medicine is implausible, say top scientists, but there's royal disagreement. And the climate is changing, and we're all to blame, warns Sir David Attenborough.
I have no hesitation at all in saying that the Earth is warming at a greater, swifter rate than it has done for millions of years, and that we are contributing in a major way to that rise.
Here, a total smoking ban that goes even further for workers at Berkshire Ambulance. Can they stub out completely? And the mystery of the fake speed camera. No one knows where it came from.
Good evening. The number of people with a gambling problem is rising sharply, according to new evidence seen by the BBC. The charity GamCare says it's now being approached for help by tens of thousands of people. Tomorrow, the debate will intensify when a list is published of those local authorities wanting to build new casinos. But the latest evidence suggests that most gambling is now done online, and that's where many gamblers seek help for their problems. Between July and September last year, there were over 7,500 visits to GamCare's help forum. But that rose to more than 42,000 in the 3 months that followed, and again to almost 90,000 in the early part of this year, as Mark Easton now reports.
If you want to make money, it seems, there is one dead cert: online gambling. Not as a punter, of course, but the industry itself. 3 of Britain's tiny band of billionaires are internet gambling entrepreneurs, cashing in as the UK public bets more than £10 billion a year online.
These days, you can gamble for big money almost anywhere, even at the kitchen table. This online casino is owned by a firm which is now the 5th biggest web company in the world. An astonishing £1,000 is wagered here every second.
At the British firm partygaming.com, profits have risen from 20 million to 600 million in 3 years.
No one to play with, play online.
It's now bigger than Sainsbury's, ICI or British Airways, even though its activities are illegal in America and marketing is tightly restricted in Britain. At the moment, casinos are prohibited from encouraging people to play their games. However, with next year's Gambling Act, Europe-based casinos will be free to entice the public to log on and bet.
22 black.
It is new, and we're promoting the fact that this is now available. That's what I think that people would expect us to do as an industry, because we are, after all, a business.
What will that new freedom mean for people like Jonathan, a gambling addict whose obsession nearly killed him?
I tried throwing myself under a bus. I just couldn't see any way out of the situation I got into.
Seeing the world through Jonathan's eyes is to see temptation everywhere. He gave up gambling before the explosion in internet sites.
It says $777, there it comes up, 777 free when you first play. I mean, that must be quite a temptation for a gambler.
That would have been. If these had been around when I was gambling, I think I'd still be gambling.
Britain has rejected American-style prohibition of online gambling and is going for regulation instead, allowing online companies to promote themselves here if they accept rules on protecting the public.
This will prohibit the glamorization of gambling. It will prohibit suggesting that if you gamble, you're certain to get rich. It will prohibit, for instance, the association between gambling and sexual attractiveness.
If you think promotion of online casinos is big now, industry experts expect an explosion in advertising and marketing.
An advert on a high street that says, go to this site and you will receive a bonus of $100 and you can win in this great big tournament $1 million. At the moment, that's not allowed. In the new Act, effectively sites can be very brazen about the types of inducements they're offering.
Millions get enjoyment from having a bet, but with problem gambling also apparently on the rise, the question is whether allowing regulated internet casinos to promote themselves more widely will make matters better or worse. Mark Easton, BBC News.
Some Home Office officials could lose their jobs after the mistakes which led to hundreds of foreign prisoners being freed without facing deportation. The new Home Secretary, John Reid, has refused to rule out any sackings. He also told MPs today that Britain's immigration system was inadequate, out of date and couldn't cope. Let's join our political editor, Nick Robinson, at Westminster.
Huw, not for this Home Secretary, the phrase, crisis, what crisis? John Reid's message today was, it really is every bit as bad as our critics had said it was. A tidal wave of events. That's how the new Home Secretary today described the headlines of his first fortnight in the job. Then he provided some of his own. The leadership and management of the immigration system was inadequate. It was not fit for purpose. The Home Office was at times dysfunctional. Normally, ministers complain that the media is exaggerating when their department gets into trouble, but not this minister, and not today.
And if I might introduce myself, John Reid, I've been in post 2 weeks, going on 2 years, it seems.
John Reid had offered himself up for cross-examination by MPs. He had something he wanted to say.
In the wake of the problems of mass migration that we have been facing, our system is not fit for purpose. It is inadequate in terms of its scope. It is inadequate in terms of its information technology, leadership, management, systems and processes.
He promised nothing less than a full and fundamental overhaul of the Home Office. And no wonder, having learnt the full extent of what he himself called the foreign prisoner crisis. 85 of the most serious offenders are still at large. 204 who could have been deported have reoffended, and 20 have committed violent or sexual crimes. The Home Office admits even these latest figures may underestimate the problem. John Reid told MPs that until the system was sorted, every figure might shift, every fact might prove unreliable. They wanted to know whether heads would roll.
It doesn't appear as though anybody will lose their job as a result of failing to take action on this issue.
Don't count on that. Don't count on that.
Don't count on that.
No, I have asked, once we deal with this crisis, I can tell you already, I have asked the Director General to carry out a review, an investigation into what went wrong.
There was one good bit of news from the Home Office today. They're removing a record number of failed asylum seekers, over 4,000 in the first 3 months of the year. The critics were unimpressed, though, by the new boy's first outing.
Clearly it's a diversionary tactic. He's savaging his own staff to draw attention from the failures of government policy. Because the real problem is that they've lost control of our borders. They don't know who's here, they don't know who's gone, they don't know who's come.
And tonight at the Home Office, they don't know who'll be staying in their jobs and who'll be going, as the new man in charge flexes his muscles. John Reid may wish to behave like Sir Alan Sugar, saying you're fired to his senior civil servants, but the rules simply don't allow him to do that. And one Whitehall insider put it this way to me: civil servants are simply sick of taking the rap for ministers who keep changing their minds on what we ought to be doing.
Nick, thank you very much. Now, there's been another big rebellion against the government's education reforms in the House of Commons tonight. 69 Labour MPs voted to change the education bill. Despite that, the government did win the vote comfortably, defeating calls for parents to be balloted when schools become independent trusts. Now, in the past few minutes, a new audio tape said to be from Osama bin Laden has been released. In it, he claims that he personally assigned tasks to each of the 19 hijackers who carried out the September the 11th attacks. Let's talk to Matt Fry in Washington. Matt, tell us more about this tape.
Well, Huw, as you say, just in the last few minutes, the timing of this tape seems to be Osama bin Laden's attempt to get involved in the whole debate about the case of Zacarias Moussaoui, who was found guilty some time ago and sentenced to life imprisonment a few weeks ago, as you may remember. He is saying Zacarias Moussaoui had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. So you might interpret this as his way of saying to the Americans, well, if you thought you had accountability with this case, you haven't. You still haven't got the people who really matter in all this. In terms of the specificity of this claim, it is the most detailed that we've heard so far. He has accepted responsibility for 9/11 and boasted about it in the past, but never quite this in this way. There are some experts who think that he might be claiming too much responsibility, that he wasn't actually involved in the specific picking of the hijackers. But the overall point, I guess, Huw, is that here's this man who is the world's most wanted man, who is this extraordinary fugitive, who is yet able to engage in a strange sort of dialogue through the ether whenever he feels like it. And that really is thumbing his nose at America.
Matt in Washington, thank you. Prince of Wales says he'd like to see greater use of complementary medicine alongside orthodox treatment. He was speaking on the day several British scientists attacked the provision of homeopathy in parts of the NHS. They called it an implausible treatment, as Jill Higgins reports.
Proper medicine or quackery? This is cupping, using hot glasses to treat back pain. It's not proven, so should it be on the NHS? Many alternative treatments already are. Thousands use them each year. But today, a group of leading doctors said this should stop. NHS money is scarce and shouldn't be spent on treatments that haven't been scientifically proven to work.
If you have had the homeopathic treatment or whatever it may be, you naturally attribute your getting better to that treatment. Usually it's not. Usually you would have just got better anyway. So people's experience, and sadly, though it's convincing to the person, it's just a rotten guide.
Now, some would argue it doesn't matter what sort of effects complementary therapies have. If patients feel they benefit, they should be able to use them. The trouble is, everything costs money. So if the NHS is spending more on alternative treatments, it has less to spend on conventional drugs that have been proven to work.
Herceptin's wanted by many women with early breast cancer. Clinical trials show positive results, but there are more regulatory hoops to go through before it's widely available. In contrast, therapies like homeopathy can be given on the NHS without anything like this sort of regulation. But today, Prince Charles defended their use. He's a long-term supporter of complementary therapy, and he told foreign health ministers it had an important role.
I believe that the proper mix of proven complementary, traditional and modern remedies, which emphasises the active participation of the patient, can help to create a powerful healing force for our world.
So these are the tablets that you've been taking.
Many patients agree. Anne Ragg has homeopathy and acupuncture for her arthritis. She's glad it's available on the NHS.
Well, yeah, more than glad, because I wouldn't have been able to afford it. I haven't got any private insurance, and without it, I just wouldn't have been able to cope with the pain, and I think I would have been disabled, so I wouldn't have been able to work anyway.
It's not certain how or if these treatments work. It could simply be that these alternative medicine practitioners spend more time with patients than hard-pressed GPs. Whatever the reason, they're well supported, so any move to end their funding on the NHS could prove very difficult indeed. Jill Higgins, BBC News.
And still to come on tonight's programme. Bumper profits for Marks and Spencer, but all the shop fronts are likely to change too. The planet is getting warmer, we're all to blame, but it's not too late to take drastic action. The appeal comes from one of our most respected voices on the various forms of life on Earth. Sir David Attenborough hasn't always been convinced by the theory of global warming, but in his latest documentary, Are We Changing Planet Earth?, he enters the debate and issues a stark warning.
I find it sobering to think that while I've been travelling the world trying to record the complexity and beauty of our planet, that I too have been making my own contribution to global warming. As I recognised when I presented Life on Earth all those years ago, we are a flexible and innovative species, and we have the capacity to adapt and modify our behaviour. Now, we most certainly have to do so if we're to deal with climate change. It's the biggest challenge we have yet faced.
And Sir David is with me. Sir David, thanks for joining us. Thank you. What is your message?
My message is that the world is warming and it's our fault, briefly.
And what should we do about it?
There is not a lot we can do about it to stop it going on warming for a bit. There is a great deal that can be done about it if we can get international agreement to prevent it becoming a catastrophe. But it has that potential.
If people now are saying, all right, well, we need a series of serious steps, where do we start?
We start really with governmental, international agreements. But at the same time, it's something that everybody needs to be involved in and to think it is important. We almost have to feel that if we waste, we really are morally responsible. And if people can get together with a big feeling throughout the country, democratically, to insist that this is what should be done, well, maybe we'll get agreement.
Are you confident that politicians have the will to do something rather than just talk about it?
They surely have the will if, in fact, that the electorate demands it, which is what we should be doing.
But if you look at every opinion poll, they are demanding it.
Well, and so the Prime Minister has, in fact, said that climate is at the top of his agenda, which is good news. There are other countries, unfortunately, where it is not top of the agenda. Governments have got to take part. But it seems to me that across the board, the political spectrum, there are people who are recognising the facts in this country and elsewhere.
It is, in essence, a political message. It's a doing message. It's a policy message.
Certainly so.
And in that sense, it enters the party political sphere.
Well, not unless both parties disagree, but both parties, as I understand it, are beginning to recognise the crucial importance of looking after climate change.
Why have you come to this position now where you feel you can state it as clearly as you're stating it, something that maybe you could have said 10 years ago? Why now?
We didn't have the evidence 10 years ago. Now I have no hesitation at all in saying that the Earth is warming at a greater, swifter rate than it has done for millions of years, and that we are contributing in a major way to that rise. In any case, we're running out of a lot of the fossil fuels on which we've depended for so long. We are going to have to find other ways if we want to preserve our cities.
Sir David, it's good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sir David talking to me a short while ago, and you can see the first of David Attenborough's programmes on climate change tomorrow evening at 9. That's here on BBC One. Let's move on now. Detectives say that they're treating the death of a newborn baby with serious head injuries as a case of unlawful killing. Earlier, police issued an artist's impression of the baby, whose body was found in a bag near Stratford-upon-Avon. Some women's clothing was also found nearby. The United States is encouraging Israel to hold meaningful talks with the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas rather than negotiate with the Hamas government. The Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is in Washington for talks with President Bush as Palestinians come to terms with Mr. Olmert's election and that of Hamas. Tension is particularly acute in Gaza, where Hamas supporters have been confronting the supporters of Fatah, which used to rule there. Now, in the first of two special reports from the Middle East, Jeremy Bowen looks at the deepening crisis in Gaza and the growing pressure on the people there from every side.
The temperature is rising in Gaza. It's one of the most overcrowded places in the world. Claustrophobic and fragile. Their troops are gone now, but Israeli pressure has not slackened. Last Saturday, an Israeli missile killed a senior member of Islamic Jihad, a group that has killed many Israeli civilians. The missile also killed 3 generations of the Amin family, a mother, a 7-year-old son, and the boy's grandmother, who were passing in this car. Maria Amin, 5 years old, survived the attack, but she's paralyzed from the neck down, unable to breathe without a machine, blinking at the new world to which Israel's missile has consigned her. What kind of future can you offer her?
No future. She will be on the ventilator lifelong. We can't even discharge her. She will be in the ICU as long as she's living.
Maria's father Hamdi and her 2-year-old brother Mu'min were not injured physically. At the end of their street, gunmen from Fatah, the faction that lost the elections. Israel is not the only cause of Gaza's crisis. There's internal pressure too, between Fatah and their rivals Hamas, who formed the government. In Gaza today, it feels as if every man with a gun and a uniform's on the streets. They're tense, they're watchful, blaming each other for the way that things are going. Just over there, one of the soldiers, who doesn't want to be filmed, said to me that this is an ugly game, and if it goes wrong, all of them could end up dead. And in the last few days, there have been gun battles and talk of civil war. The men of the Quetta family sit in their living room waiting. They are Fatah commanders. They say Hamas gunmen have already attacked them and will return. They've armed their sons. Civil war, they say, is not an option for them, but they claim Hamas is trying to impose itself by force. At Gaza's oldest mosque, Ismail Haniyeh, the Hamas prime minister, told Palestinians there would not be a civil war, but the next few months will be the most testing of his life. His Palestinian Authority is bankrupt, unable since March to pay everyone from gunmen to hospital doctors. International pressure cutting off money to the Hamas government is hitting very hard. Hospitals can't buy drugs. These children don't get all the dialysis they need and are developing complications that could shorten their lives. The poorest scavenge for scrap in the ruins of abandoned Jewish settlements. Gaza is close to breaking point. And there's a moral question too, for foreign governments, especially those in the European Union, who over more than 10 years have given big sums of money to the Palestinian Authority, which a lot of people now depend on. Palestinians ask whether it's right to punish a people collectively because of the way they voted. Like it or not, that's what's happening here. Some medical aid is coming, but the financial crisis intensifies everything. And so much pressure at once is dangerous for Palestinians and Israelis. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Gaza.
Jeremy has now travelled from Gaza to Jerusalem. We can talk to him there. Jeremy, against the background of what you were reporting there, we have these talks between Mr. Olmert and President Bush today. What are they likely to be focusing on?
Well, they'll have talked about Iran and their nuclear plans. That's an issue where the Israelis definitely don't want the Americans to take the military option off the table. But what Mr. Olmert really wants is President Bush to approve his plans for the future of the occupied West Bank. Mr. Olmert's idea is to hang on to a still unspecified but pretty substantial chunk of the West Bank, which would be incorporated into Israel permanently. Now, the American view is rather different to that. They talk about a Palestinian state standing alongside Israel, a viable Palestinian state. And viable is the most important word to talk about here, because if the Americans decide that Mr. Olmert's plans mean that there isn't space left for a viable Palestinian state, then they will be reluctant to give those plans the green light. However, whatever they say in private, they will not disagree in public, because it's not in the political interests of either leader to do that. Huw.
Jeremy, thank you very much. Marks & Spencer's recovery is gaining force. Profits have increased by 35% as the chain focuses on improving its food and women's wear. Now that Chief Executive Stuart Rose has told the BBC that he may replace the Marks & Spencer logo on the shop fronts with just M&S, as Robert Peston reports.
England. I think it's good. How much is that?
It's team talk time at Marks & Spencer. And as its boss, Stuart Rose, fondles the retailer's new World Cup range, there's just a hint that its losing streak of almost a decade could be a thing of the past.
That's a silk blend.
He's announced a surge in sales and profits, still below their 1997 record of more than £1 billion, but moving sharply in the right direction. So what had the company been doing wrong?
I think it had forgotten to listen to what its customers were saying, and it had forgotten to actually look outside every day and see what the competition was doing.
And what's it now doing right? There's been smart advertising, keen cost control and lower prices, store redesigns and, at last, responsiveness to fashion. What's more, the famous Marks & Spencer sign that has hung in every major high street for decades may be replaced by plain and simple M&S.
It's possible we might look at M&S as a brand. Nobody refers to Hennes and Morris, they refer to H&M, and I just think we need to be cognizant of where the customers' minds are. Most people tend to say they're going down to Marks or they're going down to M&S, and it's not a decision we've made yet, but I think it's one we should be alert to.
It was the attempt by the billionaire Philip Green to buy the company which led to Rose's appointment almost 2 years ago. How does a leading shareholder score Rose's performance?
I'd probably give him about 7, 8 out of 10. I mean, he's done a good job. There's probably still more to do. I mean, they've still got to keep the momentum going.
Porky pies? There were, allegedly, plenty of those flying around during the great Rose Green takeover struggle.
If that, with a bit of sunshine, we haven't got, and a pint of beer, which we also haven't got, we'd be quids in, wouldn't we? Yeah.
Marks & Spencer is as British as football, but, like the England football team, it's been synonymous with disappointment over the past few years. Is it now back on a winning streak? Well, Stuart Rose hopes so, but he's taking nothing for granted. Robert Peston, BBC News.
10 o'clock news hour continues on BBC News 24 with a look at tomorrow's papers, a business roundup, and in sport, England's World Cup squad visits the new Wembley Stadium. And here on BBC One, I'll be back with the headlines after we've joined our news teams where you are. Bye for now.
Good evening. Ambulance staff in Berkshire are being warned they'll face disciplinary action if they smoke while in uniform. The service is to introduce a total smoking ban, even for staff on their lunch break away from work. It goes further than bans elsewhere in the NHS or other emergency services. Joe Campbell reports.
A few weeks from now, and this will ultimately be a sackable offence. Gone for good, the Smokers' Corner. In fact, lighting up anywhere in uniform will be banned as the Trust becomes one of the first in the country to tell staff they can be a smoker or an ambulance worker, but not both at the same time.
Part of what we do as an ambulance trust is about promoting health. We only have approximately 100 to 120 smokers, and there are many people out there who don't smoke who have generally accepted this and said, long overdue.
With his time on duty and therefore time without a cigarette, some 8 hours or more, Mike Dennehy is one of those aiming to give up ahead of the ban. The ambulance technician's been drafted in to help others too, after giving up only to start smoking again.
I think this time round I'm more determined to give up and stay stopped. I certainly felt a lot better when I wasn't smoking, despite putting a little bit of weight on. But this time round, with the organisation stopping us smoking on site, it's going to make it that much more difficult to get through the day if I continue to smoke.
Staff will get help. The Trust is providing nicotine patches not just to them but also to partners, so they won't be tempted by others smoking at home. Bosses are also promising they'll show sensitivity to those who light up in response to particularly traumatic events. The arguments for the policy are all too obvious, but in practice though, things aren't quite so clear-cut.
We go out to people who've had heart attacks who continue to smoke, and all they're doing is really damaging their health. But I think that it's still going to be very difficult for staff who wish to smoke to find it easy to give up.
But with health unions backing the ban, the clock really now is ticking for the health services smokers. Joe Campbell, BBC South Today in Wokingham.
The government is considering labelling drugs to show if they've been tested on animals. It follows calls from Dr. Evan Harris, who's MP for Oxford West and Abingdon. He wants people to be given more information about how medicines are developed. A fake speed camera that appeared in an Oxfordshire village is set to be removed. Residents in Curbridge woke to find the mysterious camera, but nobody knows who put it there. The parish council are now trying to get it taken down, but motorists are taking notice and local people say they feel safer.
Good imitation. It didn't actually have me fooled, I have to say, but nonetheless it's a damn good effort, and I commend whoever it was who put it up, I really do.
It is slowing some traffic down. They are taking notice that there is a speed camera there, you know.
As long as it's making people aware of the speed limit around this area as well, the main thing, because it is a 30 limit through it.
This is a dangerous spot, without any shadow of a doubt, and I think it's a good idea. Good luck to whoever did it.
It seems most men still don't know the warning signs and symptoms of cancers that could affect them. That's despite prostate cancer killing 1 man an hour in Britain and testicular cancer being the most common cancer in young men. But as Brennan Nichols reports, a new campaign aims to change all that.
Ian Robertson is one of the lucky ones. He's recovering after having his cancerous prostate removed. He didn't know he had cancer, but after losing one brother to the disease, when another was diagnosed, he decided to go to his doctor.
My doctor said, well look, she said, in view of your family history, I think you ought to go and have a check. So I went to the Children's Hospital and eventually had a biopsy, and 7 of the 8 samples they took of my prostate showed cancer. So I had my prostate removed by operation. Whilst this was going on about 6 months ago, my younger brother Gordon was also diagnosed with prostate cancer.
But getting men to spot when things aren't quite right isn't easy. Despite high-profile campaigns, the latest figures show many men still don't know what they're looking for. 42% of men don't know the signs and symptoms of testicular cancer, with 34% never testing themselves. When it comes to prostate cancer, though, 67% of men don't know what they're looking for, even though over the past 10 years, rates have gone up by nearly 50%.
It's difficult to know whether the increase in incidence of prostate cancer that is because we're detecting it more often than we were previously, or whether the actual incidence is rising. I think it's important that patients do become more aware of it, so that if we do detect it, we can detect it at an earlier and potentially curable stage.
Ian's now taking part in research into links between prostate cancer and genetics, but it's a clear message that men need to be more aware. Brennan Nichols, BBC Saturday.
The Oxfordshire-based Renault Formula One team has claimed another top sporting honour. The crew from Enston have been named World Team of the Year at the Laurier Sports Awards. They beat Champions League winners Liverpool and the all-conquering New Zealand All Blacks to the title last night. Fernando Alonso was beaten to the Sportsman of the Year award by Swiss tennis star Roger Federer. We actually saw the sun out today, but what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Here's Alina.
Hello again. It's an increasingly cloudy night. Much of the night will be largely dry, but we can't rule out some patchy showery rain through the early hours, particularly through parts of Oxfordshire and also near to the coast as well. Lowest temperatures between 8 and 10 Celsius. Still that moderate to fresh southwesterly wind, which we keep tomorrow. Band of showers working its way down from the north, becoming increasingly patchy as it does so. Then a brief drier interlude towards the end of the day, and top temperatures around 14 or 15 Celsius, but tempered by the showers and also by the breeze. That rain pushing its way eastwards overnight, still lingering on Thursday morning, but then hopefully a drier period for a time, but more rain on Friday. Back to you.
That's it from me and the late team. For an update of the international headlines, we rejoin Huw Edwards in London. Bye for now.
Main news tonight, the number of people with gambling problems is rising sharply as many more play online. Tens of thousands of people are seeking help after getting into difficulty. And the Home Secretary has said that the immigration system is inadequate. He warns that officials could be sacked. Newsnight is starting on BBC Two, but from all of us here on the 10 o'clock team, have a good night.
Hello again, good evening. I wish I could bring you better news for the holiday weekend, but it still looks unsettled. And yes, still on the cool side as well. In fact, that's the case for tomorrow, a cool and showery day ahead of us with a brisk west or southwesterly wind. Now today, well, we've had a lot of showers, haven't we? Low pressure out to the west of Scotland, driving in further gusty winds tonight and more showers. The main front, this arc of cloud here, now tracking steadily south across northern England and Wales. This is really where we'll have the most persistent rain through the nighttime period. It's quite wet at the moment across Lancashire and the Manchester area, and that wet weather will continue to sink its way into the Midlands and probably settle itself across mid-Wales, where we'll see some of the wettest weather overnight, possibly about an inch of rain, 25 millimetres. South of that, largely dry and cloudy. North of that, really quite a gusty west wind blowing in some showers, but possibly with a bit of shelter, a little frost in eastern Scotland. But not as cold as last night, and obviously a lot more cloud to greet us tomorrow morning, a lot more showers as well. The main rain band, though, does tend to break up just a little bit through the day, turning more showery, and it does tend to track its way further south with time, and that means that actually from about the Midlands northwards, there should be a bit of an improvement through tomorrow afternoon. So quite good news, really. After such a miserable morning, I should think for the Midlands and much of northern England, it should turn brighter and drier. So still cool and breezy, but at least some sunshine on offer for Wednesday afternoon. Not too bad an afternoon either for Scotland, some decent sunshine, especially in eastern areas. Still cool at 12 Celsius, 54 Fahrenheit, but fewer showers. Not too bad an afternoon for Northern Ireland either, the odd shower, temperatures of 12 Celsius, 54 Fahrenheit. Come south into Wales and after a wet night and a wet start, a drier afternoon, although still cool at 14 Celsius. The showers give way to more general cloud and rain across the far southwest, but for the rest of southern England, a lot of cloud around on Wednesday afternoon. Possibly not quite the intense downpours, but still a few showers scattered around. Now, after a bit of a wet spell overnight and a breezy one, it turns drier on Thursday morning. And for Thursday, well, at least for one day, it does turn a little quieter for many of us. Still cool, but a drier day generally. And then more weather systems gang up again from the southwest. So for northern parts of the British Isles for Friday, it looks as though it'll be dull with rain at times. Brighter prospects for Saturday, mind you, with scattered showers. And then for Wales and southern parts of the British Isles, a similar story. Cloudy, rain at times on Friday, slightly brighter with showers on Saturday. So as I said, a little disappointing for the holiday weekend. That's it from me. Good night.
Next on BBC One, the Crimewatch update. The one to watch tonight.
Playing Hamlet? What, am I insane?
What happens when the dream comes true?
Imagine being Hamlet in 10 minutes on BBC One.
Wherever you go, you can take BBC News with you. Just text news to 81010 to access the latest stories from the BBC News website on your mobile phone, or go to bbc.co.uk/news. BBC News, whenever you need to know.
What do you see, sir?
Oh, great. It's the World Cup.
And now?
Wow, the World Cup. But now I can choose to see match highlights, and I can switch to alternative audio.
1-0 to England. And this?
Oh, that's easy. I love Wimbledon.
What about now?
Can't believe it. I can choose to watch different live matches.
Great point for Murray. Now try this.
That's the Open.
And now?
I can choose which group I follow. Look, I'm controlling the telly.
You seem to like this way of seeing sports, sir.
I do. But do I need special glasses?
No, you just need digital TV. Get digital TV without subscription for a one-off payment of either £150 on free satellite or from around £40 with Freeview. Also available on cable and satellite subscription services. To find out how to get digital TV, call 08700 10 10 10.
The World Cup. Great stories begin on the BBC.
So now on BBC One, before Imagine, let's head back to the Crimewatch studio.